So, since May of 2019, there have been massive protests in Hong Kong, which started over a law that would have allowed the Chinese government to extradite criminals. The problem is that in China, oftentimes the word criminal is defined as anyone who speaks up or opposes the Chinese government. So recently, there's been several instances of very high-profile companies clamping down on people who support these protests. Last month, during a Hearthstone tournament, Blizzard banned a player and revoked his prize winnings for making a pro-Hong Kong statement live on the air. And when the general manager of the Houston Rockets tweeted his support for the protest, the NBA kowtowed to China and threw him under the bus. Same thing with Apple. They're facing a backlash from consumers for pulling two apps from the App Store. First one, which was called HK Map Live, that was being used by protesters to find locations of police and barricades, things like that. And the second one was an application called Quartz, which covered the protests. This, of course, is making a lot of consumers for these companies pretty pissed off because, freedom of speech. And the problem is, it's not simply a freedom of speech issue. So for a lot of us here in the West, we have a fundamental misunderstanding of what freedom of speech actually means. We think it means that we get to do or say whatever we want, and nobody can say anything about that. No repercussions whatsoever. And in real life, freedom of speech protects you from the government, not from the actions of other people, independent people, or private companies, that kind of thing. In Western democracies, in most cases, the government is not allowed to charge you with a crime or throw you in jail because you say something that criticizes them. I think a lot of us take that right for granted, and we don't really know how to react when we're faced with a country where people don't have that right, like China. The fact is, when it comes to these companies, there really is only one motivating factor: money. For much of the 20th century, China was largely an agrarian society, which in many ways was still going through industrialization into the 60s and 70s. And then suddenly in the 80s, China finds itself with a huge and growing middle class. And that's millions of people with billions of dollars to spend. And pretty much for the last 40 years, every corporation worth anything in the West here has been trying to get a piece of that. So that our economies are pretty much tightly integrated. Just go to the store, go to the mall, go to the grocery store, and look at how much of all the stuff we buy every day says made in China on it. Didn't used to be like that. But now we've effectively shifted our manufacturing base to China, and trying to untangle that is going to cause a lot of economic problems, as we're seeing here with our president and his, misguided trade war. So usually that kind of thing's fine, with a lot of other Western democracies which we have close economic ties to, like Canada or Western Europe, there really isn't much of a problem. But the West and China have never really seen eye to eye when it comes on values that we share. Things like freedom of speech, right to assembly, representative democracy. We don't really share those values with China. For decades, China has had a one-child policy where the government would mandate how many children you have, and they would force you to get an abortion or throw people in prison for having too many children. China routinely exploits workers and allows long hours, low pay, dangerous working conditions. Apple and Hewlett-Packard had to put nets outside of their buildings in their factories in China because workers kept throwing themselves off the roof of the buildings, committing suicide because they were getting worked so damn hard. China has some of the worst air pollution in the world. They have zero protections when it comes to environmental impacts on habitat loss. Chinese fisheries do things like they'll go and they'll troll entire large swaths of the ocean, including very delicate ecosystems like coral reefs, things like that, and they'll just fish everything, right, and then just pick out the stuff they want, and the rest of it they either make dog food out of it or they'll just throw it back, right? This is China, right? Sharks are endangered because of China because they want shark fin soup. Okay, they're fucking fishing all the sharks to death, right? This is China's notorious for this stuff. The theft of intellectual copyright. Where do you think all the bootleg stuff, all the bootleg electronics and bootleg handbags and toys and shit? Where do you think all that stuff's made? It's made in China, right? They're notorious for this kind of thing. And as far as freedom of speech goes, it does not exist in China. China routinely jails and executes journalists and political prisoners. The Chinese internet is tightly controlled. It's famous for having firewalls, and filters that basically filter the entire country's access to everything. Things like Google, Gmail, Wikipedia, Instagram, Twitter, DeviantArt, pretty much all the porn ever, all of that stuff is filtered away in China. You can't access any of that shit. I mean, if you can't use the internet for social media or porn, like what the fuck are you using it for anyway? And, when it comes to democracy, I mean, shit, Tiananmen Square, people, I don't know if you remember that, 1989, a bunch of students started protesting because they wanted, democracy in China, and the government cracked down hard. Soldiers opened fire on these people. And the thing is we don't really know how many were actually killed during the Tiananmen Square protests. Hundreds, thousands, the estimates put it at several thousand, but we don't really know because China has not released any, figures on that. In fact, Tiananmen Square is one of the things you'll get thrown in jail for if you talk about it while you're in China, But there are rumors that the Chinese government disposed of bodies by repeatedly running them over with tanks until they were ground up in a little human hamburger sludge. And then that was like shoveled into furnaces and burned. I mean, there are pictures out there on the internet. Look for that shit. If you have a strong stomach and you don't mind looking at gore, that's what China does to its political dissidents, right? The thing is that we all knew about this, right? We already knew China did this shit, going in, right? 40 years ago when Nixon goes to China and opens it up for trade for the United States, we knew China, these were the values that China had. And until a month ago, nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit. We were all comfortable looking the other way. And we did so because of the money, right? Because, our corporations need to expand, right? There's only, 1 to 3% growth here in the United States every year. They ain't growing here. They ain't making no money here. The only place they can go is to markets that are emerging. And among those, India, the Far East, and especially China. That's where all the money is, and that's where they're going. So what do you think a corporation is going to do when it's faced with the choice of either censoring something that pisses off the government of its largest, market, or, taking the side of one consumer? They're going to go where the money is, right? And that's what it is. They're going to take the money every time, all right? And whose fault is it, right? Is it Blizzard's fault for, bowing to China, letting China fuck us in the ass or whatever? Yeah, maybe. Is it, Apple's fault or the NBA's fault? Is it capitalism's fault? That's another thing you're seeing. A lot of people out there are blaming this on late stage capitalism and all that. Yeah, maybe it is, right? But you gotta keep in mind, we have other forms of capitalism where in other countries on Earth where we don't have this kind of thing. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a mix of all of this, really. Repressive government with repressive economic system, But I think if we're going to blame somebody, we should put the blame where it belongs. That blame is on China, number one. Blame them. They're the ones causing all the problems, right? They are where the blame lies, number one. And secondly, you should probably blame us as well, That is the West, the corporations, the governments in the West, especially the United States government, who allowed all of this to happen in the first place. There wasn't, within my lifetime, it wasn't like this, late 70s, early 80s, a lot of our manufacturing was still in this country, and manufacturing that we did get would come from places like, Mexico, Canada, right? That kind of thing. And you did see, made in China on stuff. They were starting to take over. And it was really during the 90s and early 2000s where that just accelerated. A lot of pretty much all of our industrial base got outsourced over to China. And it's to the point where it is now, where it's cheaper to make something there and import it back than it is to manufacture it here. If we were to cut off all trade with China, a lot of people would be out of work in this country, right? A lot of the stores would be bare. I could tell you, toy companies would just be out of business because there are no manufacturing facilities for the shit they need here, So you should blame us, We knew what they were, right? And, we're kind of like a hysterical wife that keeps going back to an abusive husband, China manipulates its currency and it rips off our intellectual property. Yeah, it was an accident. He didn't mean it, right? China puts a million ethnic Uyghurs into re-education camps, right? Yeah, he just has a temper, and you'd like him if you really got to know him. And it's my fault that he keeps punching me in the face. Really, it's my fault. I deserved it. That's what we're like. So yeah, maybe we deserve it. Maybe we deserve it because we've been looking the other way for 40 years. Every time we go to the mall, every time we go to the grocery store, buying cheap pieces of crap, trinkets, for the convenience, and in the meantime, sacrificing our economic future. And yeah, it sucks, but what are you going to do, right? You going to stop playing WoW? Fuck that shit. Anyway, that's all I got, folks. Adios.